So, hey everyone, happiest of Fridays. We'll do the official intro in a couple minutes, but yeah, good to see you, and good to see you, Mr. Patriotsounds.
Good
Um,
to see you, sir.
you look like quite the Mexican patriot there, don't you?
Yes,
Just kidding.
absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm the real deal. Absolutely patriotic American. Do my
yeah.
best.
It's funny because like you have a much better background than I do. I have a bunch of like stuff that I just started throwing on this literal reclaimed shelf that I got for free, and maybe the stuff is cool, but like I need to. There's nothing quite like a good old um, flag that's also color coordinated with what you're wearing today and everything. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm a one-dimensional person, man. I'm an American who hates the government, just like any American should. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And I have to say that should make you a stereotypical crypto person. These
yes, it
days, not
does.
so much anymore. It's like there's a lot of ways it goes, but in my opinion, that's kind of what this is about, you know.
Correct.
So and yeah, like I guess we're gonna go to the THORChain type news stuff in just a little bit, but for like the pre-show part, um, how did you get involved in THORChain of all things? I must have had a conversation with you in person about this, but I don't. I had a conversation with lots of things, and I have
Yeah.
like a sweet potato for a brain. So
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. Basically, when it comes to crypto, got involved. I think 2019. So I'm a latecomer. I'm not like some OG from like Eric Voorhees or anything like that. And pretty simple. We have a very severe monetary problem. We have this debt crisis that we have, reckless fiscal policy, and now you're seeing with the whole Doge stuff. Department of Government Efficiency, the complete waste of money. There's obviously a huge problem with our monetary system. And then when I figured out Bitcoin, just jumped into it, understood it right away, and really fell in love. And then it was grassroots crypto and Chad Barraford. I saw some
mm-hmm.
videos on YouTube, them describing THORChain, and it clicked right away because I knew from pretty early on there's a fundamental problem: is how do you take one blockchain and go to another without
Mm-hmm.
surrendering custody and all that jazz. And so fell in love right away with THORChain. Love THORChain to death. Still do. I'm pretty committed to THORChain. It's the idea is novel. It's very important. Very so important that the consequences are absolutely profound.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped in the Telegram, started educating people about it. Sam Yap was the first one to educate me. And then we had a lot of stuff happen. I kind of stepped up, and they're like, "Hey, you want to be the mod?" And I'm like, "Okay." Here I am, 5 years later or whatever it is. So it's been a
Promoted to
fun journey.
community
It's
manager. You know,
Yeah,
the
it's
community
been very
member.
exciting. Yeah, that THORChain just like it's had like a Gandalf the White moment. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
we just had some crazy moment, and come back, and I'm actually really excited now. Super excited now that we've kind of made this incredible change. It's kind of just
Mm-hmm.
ripping the Band-Aid off, and so there's a lot of things to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had to kind of keep that whole perspective, myself over the years. Obviously, a lot of the OGs, almost all the OGs, of course, got involved because of Bitcoin. Almost no one went first to something else because there just wasn't a lot. And
Right.
then sort of filtered out since then. There's a lot of communities have come and gone. A lot of people are like maxis or not maxis, but like hardcores. I'm like, this is the one. This is just going to take us to the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sort of been like, just I kind of had my, Bitcoin first, and then I got really into Dash for a while. And then at the end of 2019, from 2019 to 2024, I kind of took like I'm just going to like float around and see what's going on and run the
Right.
podcast. That's why I started the show. I ended up, still ended up working full time in Dash again starting last year. But then I've been sort of trying to like seeing from above everyone the same narratives. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is the one that's going to work," and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of kept me like trying to be like an anti-maxi in a lot of ways, sort of.
Yeah.
But you do see some ideas and projects that pop up once in a while where you see that this is going to make a difference. And when THORChain came around, and I joined ChaosNet and started doing all that stuff. Yeah, I knew this was something that like was big, The
Yeah.
big
Well,
thing that you didn't really see anywhere else, really.
right. And like THORChain is almost like the opposite of a maxi. It's basically, I mean, I guess you could be a rune maxi, but when you say you're a rune maxi, you're essentially saying, I am maxi on infrastructure for all ecosystems, cross chain liquidity, flowing back and forth. I am a maxi in terms of opening up the freedoms and removing this prerequisite of having to go to a centralized exchange and surrender custody to your assets. That's, so I was never a Bitcoin maxi. I liked it a lot. It's definitely, I mean, it's such a new concept. When you first hear about it, you're like, wow, that's really interesting. Because, anyone starting on crypto, they have very simplistic questions. Like when I first saw Bitcoin, you see a picture, the common graphic with like a golden coin with a B. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this something physical? Like that's how much you don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with THORChain, it's just like, okay, there are many ecosystems. There are many points of innovation. We need to help settle. Like right now, it's a Precambrian explosion of all these different ecosystems and consensus mechanisms and block times and all this stuff. We need to allow the market and a rapid ability to just quickly figure out, what really works, what are the strong points. And I'm pretty sure that the future is going to be multi-chain for sure. Different stable coins, different, but there's not going to be nearly as many winners as there are total chains. I mean, there's going to be a huge die-off at some point when people finally gravitate around quality. Right now, it's kind of sort of. I mean, the meme thing's kind of going down as far as I can tell, but I mean, it's a new market, so it's just It's just wild.
It's funny. I do know some people who remain unnamed who are kind of still like the THORChain maxi. And like not just like that more than anything else, but are just like don't really see a lot of value in the other chains, and it's such a weird perspective to me about like this is an amazing thing because it lets people go from worthless thing to worthless thing. It's like
Right.
surely you must believe one of these is actually good,
Yeah, right. The only reason THORChain has value is that it holds exogenous assets. And if every other exogenous asset is worthless, then THORChain's worthless. So I agree with you. There's like Dash Dash is on Maya, but we DEX aggregate. So from the user's perspective, it's like often just a seamless. You go Bitcoin to Dash or Dash whatever. But yeah, I think that's a little weird. There is still so many more innovations to be had in THORChain. THORChain was a 0 to 1 in my opinion, basically allowing allowing liquidity channels open between ecosystems, 0 to 100%. But there are still more 0-1s to happen, and I think privacy is probably the next big thing for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those big things. Well, let's roll the intro officially, and then just kick this thing off officially.
Okay.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Right, and hey everyone, welcome officially now. This is Digital Cash Rundown, episode 184, which means 184 weeks in a row, plus a few weeks off, plus a few unnumbered episodes. So it's a long time been doing this. I'm joined by the one and only Patriotsounds. How's it going, man?
It's going all right, sir. How are you doing?
Good to see you. Oh, good to see you too. Good to not as much as IRL. Like we saw each other last year, but
no.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see you again.
Yeah, that's always great, man. I love meeting people in the real life. When I met you at Rare Evo, because if there's nothing like it, guys, go to Block. I'm going to be at Bitcoin 2025 conference in Las Vegas. I hope anyone watching this goes. I want to meet you. Like when you form that human connection, it's way better, way better.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I don't know if I'm at that conference. I'll be at the Litecoin one, but I'll be like in Vegas around the same time, because Litecoin one's like bookends it. But yeah, I'll be there. So we'll definitely run into each other again. Other people might. It is always fun to run into people IRL because I really feel like, first of all, that's the best way to get to know like the good people. And there are some like good people. You get a lot of different energy sometimes like that, but also just the rest of the people. It is very interesting to see when like the random person you see behind the keyboard somewhere, and you see them in real life, and all of a sudden your just opinion of them is just like so different.
Right.
And like I still remember, I engaged in a little bit of online banter here and there with especially the maximalists. Again, people hijacking Bitcoin up there, right? But I was walking around Nashville going to get my morning coffee, which is when I'm at my most vulnerable because my brain can't process things yet. And then some random person on the street, some like skinny dude smoking a cigarette outside of just outside, is like called me up by name. I'm like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh yeah, how's it going? I'm that dude you've been like in this troll war with all week on on X." I'm just like, "Oh, okay." And he's just like, "Yeah, I like, agree with a lot of stuff you say, just not everything." I'm like, "All right, cool, all right, see ya." But it's just kind of funny when just the rando like laser eyed whatever, who you just like, man, that guy's got it, and then you just run into him and he's like sort of kind of cool, but also that like he sees you, you're just and like
Yeah.
recognizes you from your profile picture or whatever. It's kind of weird.
That's a weird thing about the space. The cliche is don't judge a book by its cover, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
always agree with that. But this is so true in this because everyone's got like these weird avatars, like the laser eyes and stuff, and or they've got like the frog thing going on, and like, oh, that's a weird thing. And then you talk to them, whether online or actually meet them in person, and they're super smart, like incredibly intelligent, well articulated. Share a lot of your same values, and it's hard to parse who someone is by just looking at an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the most fascinating industry I've ever been involved in. It's so
Well,
much fun.
speaking of which, so I'm doing this on I'm also doing a thread cast on Inleo, and Cal's in the comments. And when I was at Rare Evo where I met you, Cal was supposed to be there too, because he co-sponsored the Maya booth, right, for Leo Dex and all them, and it didn't end up being there. Should have been. But then later, I actually met him in Croatia at a conference a few months later. And then since then, we've been working together very closely on a bunch of cool initiatives. And that's another person where you just like, as soon as you meet, then you're just like, all right, this is explosion of possibilities and all these kinds of
Right.
things. And definitely one of those people that's like great to meet IRL.
Yeah. Oh, and that's why I like Discord because it's good, but there is interaction with humans is really underrated. Whether like video conference is okay, but meeting someone in person, shaking their hand, reading their body language, you cannot replace. It's irreplaceable. So yeah, and you meet someone in real life, and I meet you, and it's like, oh, now we're friends. It's cool. I like it. It's awesome.
Yeah. And just the last thing on that before we roll into other stuff, I have to give a big shout out to the Maya community. I've been a fan of Maya since before the launch, all that kind of stuff. They added Dash as their first coin, which is because I aggressively courted them about that after, THORChain kind of snubbed the Dash community and a few others at that time. And the Maya team is kind of noteworthy for being like much more anon and than the THORChain team. Although the THORChain people still had a few identities kind of kept secret for a while. But the Maya team, like, for real, like, as someone who's been like living on crypto for all this time, you can sort of recognize when you start to do business with them is when you bump into who's a phony and who isn't. And like, you run into the actual like lack of bank accounts and the actual lack of like all that stuff. Like it's raw. It's like real. But so a lot of times a non-crypto people can be some real sketch balls, right? Especially
Right.
from like another country, from like outside the US. It's like, but meeting the Maya team in person I wasn't really surprised because I worked with them enough to kind of get to know their vibe, but they're more professional than the people who are like legit and have all the fancy bank accounts and titles, LinkedIn's, and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they're super super professional and like dedicated and well put together and like also next level thinking. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not gonna talk too much smack about Charlie Lee, but like I kind of feel like Litecoin, which has turned into something actually pretty cool more recently. But in the beginning, it was sort of like, oh, well, let me experiment with Bitcoin and like tweak some things. And Maya is kind of the same vibe, but not at the same time. It's like
Right.
thinking the next level ahead. And just that forward thinking is kind of what brought Alux to the forefront of the discussions on how to save THORChain in the end.
Yeah.
I just think that's cool. But let me just run into this. I got a shill coin ATM radar because they keep on throwing me money for some reason. So this podcast is proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, there's, just don't. It's a lot easier to use cash and safer than going meeting some random person in some random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, of course, you truly own all the crypto you buy. Again, big theme of this whole thing is not your keys, not your coins, and all that. And with Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptos for cash. On their website, search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. And you can also search by geographical area, such as country, state, city, and check and compare actual current fees at different ATMs. To find out more, coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. And they're another cool, good people. I see them always liking and all my spicy posts on X and things like that.
Yeah.
And, they just reached out to me out of the blue to sponsor, and they just send me straight crypto, and there you go. Just like a nice little email handshake agreement, and there you go. So just the way I like it. I mean, sometimes you need legal documents and all this other kind of official stuff, but when you don't, you don't. So
yeah, it's like I love the old school, just look you someone in the eye and handshake and make a verbal agreement, and then it's the honor of the men or the man and woman or whatever involved is what upholds the agreement. That's totally me, absolutely.
What's funny about that is it's like the ends of the bell curve, because that's like the most boomer take ever. Like every boomer is like, "Oh, back in my day, all you needed is this," and then all this stuff came in the real world came in the middle of that, and then now we're kind of at the other end where people have gamed the system so much that all the paperwork doesn't mean anything anymore, and now these random crypto anons are just like, I get a sense for this guy. And funny enough, when I rented an apartment in 2017, I believe, it was actually a pretty decent place, but the owner of all those apartment buildings, he they didn't have any income verification or anything like that, but he wanted to meet everyone. And so he just met and hung out with this old guy at his big house for half an hour to an hour, and then there you go, you get the apartment. And it's funny enough because he was also a very successful lawyer, and you think that a lawyer would want all the documents and paperwork and everything, but I think he just has been through enough of that to realize the loopholes, and he just I can tell if someone's not going to pay their rent from meeting them, and I can't really tell that from their proof of income and other things like that. So,
yeah, especially with all the AI tools and all the automated stuff, people their CVs now, it's all generated. I mean, and it's all the same. There is no effort needed to make yourself look professional. It's all handed to you. And so I think people going back to the human element now, it's becoming a more useful tool and marker to determine if someone's good. Because even a lawyer, even if you understand the ins and outs of evicting people and stuff, no one wants to do that. That's such a pain in the ass, right? And so, yeah, it's the Maya. I really love what you said about Maya, because I've been with Alex more than once, and the guy's a saint. I love his team. This team is amazing. I have great things to say about Zay and the Mocha, but they're a similar team as well. I mean, they're fantastic, and that's what I gravitate more, is someone a team or an individual that's just has honor.
Yeah. Honor, but also there's a lot of good people with honor who are kind of like a putz. They're not really, they're great people, but they don't have it together. Maya people have it together. And
absolutely.
This is where maybe I'll probably save this for later in the discussion as we get more through the THORChain stuff, but I noticed there's a difference in not to talk any shit about any of the THORChain builders, but there's a little bit of a difference in the very top from where the Maya team is to where at the time the top of the THORChain team is. But let me just flip to this first thing here. So anyway, THORChain nodes voted to remove block rewards from 25,000 rune per day emitted from the reserve down to 2 per day, eliminating inflation completely, 100% of income is now from swap fees, with a deflationary burn of 5% system income. So I read like Prop 6, which was the, you know, the THORChain recovery plan type thing that Alux proposed. Before this, I think, was part of it. I don't remember if this was part of it from the beginning or not, but it seems to be kind of later in the thing. It's kind of a ballsy move. What do you think?
I think it's good because so when the whole thing happened, I don't know if we want to go in the history if people were that familiar, but you know, I think what the market wants is or just anybody who understands THORChain, they want something that just no nonsense that works. And the original ethos of THORChain was a very simple design back in 2021 on the beginning of ChaosNet, which is eventually became known as mainnet after a certain period of time. The blockchain thing, yeah, it is a little ballsy, but THORChain makes a lot of revenue. THORChain has, because they have integrations like a bunch, Ledger, OKX, Trust Wallet, lots of other wallets like Edge, and just a bunch of wallets that we make pretty good revenue. So there was talk before this whole moment, like maybe we should slowly taper off the block rewards, go from what we have now and half them or quarter them, and slowly wean ourselves off. But with everything going on, it's just like, you know what? We're getting rid of all the THORFi stuff. Let's rip the Band-Aid. Let's go. And right now, nodes, if they run bare metal, they're okay. They're still in the positive. I'm not too sure about those who use a third-party provider to help run their daemons. But if what that's going to do is that's going to encourage them in an economic sense to go to bare metal, which is more decentralized and more secure, right? So I think it's a good thing, and the market seems to like it. If you're one to look at a chart, I certainly like it because inflating the supply and circulation has had lots of negative consequences that Kenton and Lush and Boone and Proof of Steve. Many people have been talking this for a while. So
for sure.
Get rid of them, and that's what we did. So I'm happy about it personally.
It's funny how like things move in trends. It's just like, I'm sure you've heard. I don't know if you've heard. It depends on how chronically online you are, like me. But like, have you heard the trend of like when people are on flights, they raw dogging the flight, as they call it, where they just like they don't do any movies or anything, they just sit and stare the whole flight. It's just that people are into like. I think first off, I think that's stupid, but that's a different subject. But I remember in the early days, like obviously Bitcoin started out with like the 21 million limit, but a very long emission curve of there's no dump, no ICO, no anything like that, but it just like mined, but then just goes down and down and down. And the idea is the fees would come and replace it over time. And I still think that's one of the best like design systems in crypto. Like it was definitely like top 20, I would say, kind of thing, which for 16 years in is pretty amazing that the first try got to be the top 20. And of course, I think the reason it had to be so long of an emission curve was that getting fees from like payments, getting revenue volume that's significant on a crypto network is just so hard. Think about it. Bitcoin got decent fee revenue at one point. Ethereum got way more. And anything else that got fee revenue was not payments, was not straight up money. It was all complex things, businesses running things, degens, whatever else. And so you kind of had to have that long thing. Unfortunately, that turned into a trend of every crypto project being like, oh, we'll just have this little emission curve that does this. And even Bitcoin runs on 98.5% to 299 or so percent on their inflation. That's what finances the network. There's almost no fee revenue, even from the first crypto. And it went, it's kind of the victim of its own success in some weird ways. And so that was the way. And then you get to like some of these models, like for example, Steam/Hive with like a constant like inflation and no real fee revenue at all. But then the idea is, in order to pledge resources to like do more things, you have to buy the token, which puts the price up. Therefore, it offsets inflation. All this like complex stuff. And then Ethereum doing like the EIP 1559 with the the fee burn mechanism and all this stuff. People have been, I think that's over. And I don't know who started it. I know that, I don't know who to give the credit for, but Nano and IOTA, I don't know if IOTA did the same thing, but like for Ryblox, which turned into Nano, had just everything minted at once. And all those DAG-based early generation ones. And then no one really cared. But then like Maya just came out like ballsy, like we're not going to cacao. We're just going to do the liquidity auction. It's all out there and sink or swim on fees. A bunch, it seems to be trendy now that people are like, it's like cool to do that. And like that was one of the big advantages I think Maya had over THORChain was, one of the disadvantages from getting liquidity, but one of the advantages of just not having the token inflated, because when the token gets inflated, just like when the currency gets inflated, you are whoever's paying for it is the holder. So it's just the holders paying a HODL tax or a HODL fee or whatever.
Right.
And so everything does it. Bitcoin does it. Dash does it. Every coin does it. The Monero has a very small, but it's infinite, like tail emission and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you can realistically get a fee revenue, which it is clearly realistic from THORChain, you should cut that out as soon as you can. And that's what happened with THORChain is THORChain was somehow making money hand over fist, but everyone involved was losing money. And it's just like, how the hell does that work?
Yeah. And you know what? Shout out again to Maya, because here's the thing. It's like when THORChain came into existence, this is 0 to 1. Like our developers made many mistakes, but they told us from the very beginning, they're straight up like, listen, if we're not making mistakes, we're not innovating enough. This is hard. It's like when you're making new economic doctrine and a whole new primitive that's never existed before, getting it right is very hard. And what's cool about Maya is not only when they forked THORChain, but they then tried to try something different. And so they had the Maya token. They have no block rewards, which turns out to be a superior design, in my opinion. And now THORChain has adopted that model. God bless the Maya people. I love them to death. They really, if they did not exist, I don't know if we would, honestly. They took a model and they improved upon it, is what they should. And like you said earlier, their ethos is one that is the real deal. They really want to basically liberate the world. That's what I want to accomplish with THORChain. And I'm also a Maya. I do Maya too. Our communities are really blended. There's plenty of node operators on THORChain that also run nodes on Maya chain. So it's hard sometimes to distinguish us, but yeah, it's fantastic. And I think now, as you said, all these different models, we're starting to figure out what's working and what's not going to work.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting situation because like as far as like crypto teams and things like that are concerned, I would say Maya, like 10 out of 10, basically. THORChain team, I would give today is a different story, but back in the day, I would give it like a solid 7 out of 10, maybe 8, like still good. Now the rooms for improvement and obviously I've had Chad on my podcast 4 different times. I've had what's his name, JP on once. I've had obviously these people like my friends and stuff. I think there were some miscalculations in terms of, first of all, there's been some funny, I won't say funny business is not the right term. It sounds too FUD to say that, but there's been some things where people have been unhappy about their dealings with them, where like some early LPers, but then also a lot of chains were promised or verbally agreed to. Again, there's the shake hand and the word thing coming in again. Verbally agreed to be added and then felt rugged after that. There's a few things like that. What's his name? Kayaba Nerve, Luke Parker, the Sarai guy. And, I know him too. He seems to be a very intelligent person. And he's had some bug bounty issues with THORChain, where there was some misunderstanding about how those happened. I would call it 50. I don't know, right? I don't know. So I'm going to call it 50-50. However, what I would do if I could have at all afforded it is just pay off the unhappy person, make it right, and do it. And they're like, nah, we're not going to do that. And it's like, okay. And then I do feel like I don't know if it's Chad or JP or whoever, blame game. I don't know. Who cares? They're great people and also going through some stuff right now personally, both of them from what they've seemed to have communicated. And so I wish them nothing but the best and love to have them back on whenever, anytime. They seem to have gotten ahead of themselves a little bit, been like, we won, and then acted like they won and kind of screwed it up by getting a little too adventurous with some of this cool stuff and being like, well, the price of rune's going to still keep going up. So all these features like Thorfire, they're going to work out and just not be quite responsible enough. Whereas the Maya team was intentionally like waiting back a little bit. They're like, well, let's see how this goes before we jump on it. And that ended up being what prevailed. I think that THORChain today is, I mean, I have no idea who all is involved at the kind of at the top and stuff, but I would say lessons learned were closer to Maya territory now,
Yeah. And in terms of the whole Sarai Dex thing, I'm not sure. I'm not privy to the exact details. But the other thing that, there's a disagreement. There's some hurt feelings. If I tried to mend the wounds here, I said, because I love Sarai Dex. I love the fact that they're trying to make a privacy Dex. This is something I crave desperately. I want them to succeed so desperately, and I want to Dex aggregate them to both Maya and THORChain. So I just hope if the Sarai community hears this, like, I friggin' love you guys. And I'm sorry that there was some past hiccup stuff. I don't know the details. I'm not here defending or accusing anyone. I don't care. Like, we have this one opportunity to liberate the next two generations. We're never going to get this again. This is such a transformational time. And I want you guys to desperately get the privacy thing right, because it's hard. I remember Chad Verifor talking about adding privacy. It's like, he said, I'm not a cryptographer. Like, I'm not good at this stuff. And because THORChain has to observe where all transactions go, where they're coming and where they're going. And this is a very hard thing to do when you have a privacy coin like crypto notes. Very, very complex. We actually had a dev work on it for a while, and I know there's all rigmarole about what happened there. Irrelevant. Let's just water under the bridge. I want Sarai Dex to be huge and successful, and I want to Dex aggregate them, and I wish the best. Like, their community is amazing. I love their community.
Yes.
In terms of the bad design things, like, this is the hard thing, and this is something I struggled with before, because I was never comfortable with the assumption that Rune would outperform Bitcoin in market. Because even if that's true, generally speaking, if you make a design that's predicated on that happening, then you've changed the game theory, because then you've made it gameable on itself, right? Like, then you incentivize someone to take the counter bet. So it was a flawed thing to begin with. But the thing that really got me excited about THORChain is like more of a first principle thing. It's like, is the economic system that we use in traditional finance, is it made because it has to be this way because of the human condition? So you have people who are greedy or altruistic or, unscrupulous, or you have a middleman, right? Like, if you had something like code, which, shout out to Eric Voorhees, he says things like, code is better than law because it just does exactly what it's supposed to do, assuming it's designed correctly, right? Its code is just does what the code says. If you have a system where you can remove the ambiguities of the human condition, the element, can you actually build something that's a little different? Like, maybe, I don't know, like capitalism plus, right? Where you do not need any trust assumptions. And I didn't know the answer to that question. And it turns out after our experimentation with Thorfire and Saber, it's like, capitalistic principles are actually pretty solid. And we can improve on them with things like streaming swaps, which is incredible. Streaming swaps are insane. Like 3 basis points, right? If you have no minimum fee.
That's the streaming swaps is definitely the biggest innovation in that whole thing, because the entire system was kind of like built around, like, how do we attract enough liquidity to make these swaps work the way they do?
Right.
And then with streaming swaps, that's one of those things that people like. Yeah, I see it. There's so much chatter, so many people, which is a sign of a live community, which is great. But there's so much chatter about, like, oh, streaming swaps really screwed us over. The LPers got screwed because of streaming swaps. And, like,
I
it's
disagree with that
there
so
is
strong.
there's a nugget of truth to it in that they put their capital in to be with a certain kind of expectation of financial reward,
Yes, I understand what
and
you're saying.
now that streaming swaps means that like a tenth of that capital is required, they're
Right.
either going to be underpaid for a long time or they should move their capital elsewhere. But
There's there's a
yeah, but
there's a little
that's
bit more
short
to
term
that though.
thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, but there's actually there's a really unfortunate thing that happened because before streaming swaps, we had this problem of pool depth, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you have one swap and it is subject to the slippage of whatever it is. So you were having people take, like, let's say you wanted a $10 million swap. They had to do each individual transaction a little bit at a time. It wasn't automated. And so unfortunately, that was why Savers was invented. I don't like Savers at all, but that's why it was made, because it was an attempt to make the pools deeper so that we could have bigger swaps, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when streaming swaps came in, it basically made Savers obsolete. Like, he didn't need it anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we just didn't have the leadership that could just say, okay, this is better. Let's remove Savers. But we just couldn't do it despite the numerous debates. But if I think in a world where if we had made streaming swaps first and never did Savers, I think it really would have had opportunity. Because you're right, in the short term, it hurts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a complete competitive advantage over the medium to long term, it has a chance to just be. I mean, if you look at a bar graph of the set of centralized exchange swaps, the liquidity swaps compared to decentralized, even to this day, it's tiny. Like, it's,
Mm-hmm.
if you just look at the trillions, like, you can't even see it. It's so small. So the room to grow is so incredible. But you're right in the sense that it hurt in the short term. And then when you add sense leverage on top of it, recipe for disaster. Disaster. So Saber sucks.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I have to say, so first of all, a lot of THORChain's drawbacks, or the THORFi, I should specifically say, were things that to me make sense today. I didn't 100% see coming. Like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I was always, no. Like, no, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this seems interesting. I actually liked THORChain a lot because of the THORFi features, because they were geared at people, at
Yeah.
end users, at they were pleasing everyone, which is unfortunately is where you end up in trouble sometimes. But like,
Sometimes, yeah.
Savers was great because people wanted to earn interest on their coins that don't offer that. Unfortunately, the cost was too great to offer that. Synths also made trading like to where you're going to do big trades on a DEX and stuff. It made that a lot easier. But
Yes.
unfortunately, you just can't like cover for Bitcoin's crap experience. So you can't only do that. Maybe you can, but if you can't afford to, stop trying to force it. Just let them do a streaming swap or whatever. Or just let them do a back and forth and eat like a $8 transaction fee each time or each way or whatever. Like, but all those things were such good ideas. I thought they were good ideas, and understanding now they weren't good ideas, but it's a nice thought, right?
Yeah, and if there's a silver lining here, we own our mistakes. The THORChain community, we own everything, because I mean, we've been saying that from the very beginning. We're going to make mistakes because we're literally like the first ones to try this stuff. Making a THORFi idea is not conceptually wrong, but putting it on the base layer and have the
Mm-hmm.
security budget being consumed, or whatever you want to say, or have a mint, like, that's completely wrong. What you should do is what we're doing now, is have the base layer super secure and simple to understand, and then you can have something like an app layer with Ruji. Like, to me, that is such an obvious improvement, and that's the way we should have done it. But it's not so obvious because if you want to economically liberate the world, you have to offer services that centralized exchanges or any regular economic primitive that exists in traditional finance, you have to offer that. And
Mm-hmm.
before, Kuji, and I mean, it's kind of funny how Kuji came into the system. I mean, they had a liquidity crisis that we helped them with. And then we had our own internal liquidity crisis, I guess you could say, which then Maya so bailed us out on. But it's funny how it's all coming around circle now. So I think
Mm-hmm.
what's great is we're having this aggregation of communities, whether you have the Kuji people or now the Ruji people, Maya, THORChain, like the people who are really serious about this, like everyone has bruises on them. Maybe Maya is pretty
So
unscathed.
far, but
They're the
like
legend.
it is funny.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to next Ruggiera is gonna rebrand to Runa, and we'll go full circle because of like Luna's right.
Oh man.
It's just the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it's kind of funny how like the whole Thorify stuff has a little bit of there's two elements to it, and I think there needs to be a line drawn by whoever's working on it about which side are you going to be on. There's one is the BitConnect line, which is it too good to be true? Everyone wants the thing where they just have like zero risk, lots of money. Like everyone wants that. Everyone wants to make it big. And the other side is actual financial instruments for like a real life. Like how do you take a loan out without the credit score system? How do you trade more efficiently? There's a bunch of stuff that you want to provide there. And so that stuff you want to do, but then there's the BitConnect crap. And then you can't fall into that side. You have to like draw a line very, disciplined. It's just like, if you talk about, like people with mental compartmentalization when they have some sort of a dirty job, like, if you're in like law enforcement or a soldier or whatever, like where the rules of engagement, like where do you draw that line before you turn into a literal like genocidal maniac, or are you just defending your country? Like where you have to be very clear with that line. And so that's going to be interesting. Like with the whole Rugi layer, I'll have to look into it. I'll have to see what it looks like. It's probably not for people like me, but as long as it's contained. And that's the thing that I have to say, this about like socialism, right? I'm not a big fan of socialism because, and a lot of that comes to like, America, patriotism, whatever, like freedom stuff, and socialism tends to be on the other side of that. A lot of that comes to like the economic stuff of it just doesn't work out with incentives. Crypto is the best economic playground in the world because you get to just do all these little things. And where I think the THORChain issues started from, and most of the crypto issues in general, of all the cryptos that have problems, come from some manner of socializing the wrong things, where profit should affect whoever made it happen, and losses should also affect whoever made it happen. And when you start to be like, well, if this person screws up, everyone loses money. If this person does well, everyone gains money. You got to be very careful with how those happen, because too much socialization, like socializing the profits and losses from all these Thorify features onto the LPers, that's when you start to run into issues. Otherwise, people could gamble all they want as long as they lose their own money and only their money.
Yeah, that's true. And that's thankfully THORChain, despite all these mistakes that we've made with Thorify and Savers and all this stuff, we're in a strong position to fix it because of what THORChain offers and the revenue it generates. If we didn't generate revenue, if we didn't have this, I mean, there'd be nothing to do, right? Yeah. But thankfully, because we're so strong, we can kind of right shift here. And yeah, I mean, social, like, I know you and I are against socialism. Socialism just doesn't work at scale, right? So you can be socialist with your family, but you can't be socialist with the society, because then, it just doesn't work. That's when the capitalist society comes, where you need a more meritocratic system that has, that doesn't just ruin everything. I mean, it always fails. It's just, but yeah, so I don't know if you want me to talk specifically about on a THORChain feature, but I agree with you. Like all the criticisms you levied, they are 100% correct. And the thing with this,
I call them more lessons than criticisms. It's just,
well, yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, no,
point,
criticisms are good. I don't want you to tell me why THORChain's going to win. Tell me why it has problems or why it's going to fail. That's useful information. I don't care. Like, and the great thing about the community is the reason why we're able to survive is that there was enough voices pushing back on Thorify and Savers and kind of tapering or confining, because if you would have just let me, I think some of the devs go, they would have made Thorify with no cap and just, mint to the moon. And they could probably make the argument, because we didn't do that, maybe, I don't know what they believe, but that's why it didn't work. But it's because of the pushback is what makes, like, people who are yes men, I don't like those people. I like someone who's a free thinker, and that's when you contribute something. You don't contribute by just nodding your head because you want to be popular. It's
Well,
not
the
how it
good
works.
thing about these lessons, as they were, I kind of feel like this is one of those things that's like has plagued Bitcoin for all its inception. Is at some point there became this like, should we add new features? And of course, this goes to the block size war and everything. Let's just forget that whole
Right.
hijacking Bitcoin nonsense for the moment. But just say even today, there's a few things like OpCat or CTV or I don't even know what the hell they are to be honest, because nothing cool is happening on Bitcoin's network anymore. But it happened over and over where like Litecoin tested out SegWit and tested out Lightning Network first so the Bitcoin could do it later, and then it just stopped happening because at some point you're just moving. You're moving along and there's no good opportunity or impetus to stop and actually reflect on these problems and fix them. And
Sure.
I feel like savers and all these other things, I feel like this is brewing for like, oh, well over a year at
For
least.
sure.
And not like, I think that the problems were brewing, I wouldn't even say problems, but just the optimizations were brewing for a couple years, and then it just started to get into problems, and then they became like existential problems. But I want to highlight this other one right here about admin Mimir has been removed from the network with today's update. Nodes have full control over network parameters. So for the people who aren't balls deep in THORChain like us, right?
Yeah.
The Mimir is basically the admin. Basically, one person could press a button and stop certain features of the network, and
Right.
then the nodes could all come around and vote to reverse that decision. And so that famously, JP kind of what YOLO and boom, and then
Yes.
and that kind of like was the impetus of, what, this button, this nuke button, yeah, let's not have that anymore. So
Right.
as a result of THORChain hitting a bottom, now it's like, let's clean out. It's kind of like a very good analogy, not to get too political in this crap, but like for the US right now about hitting rock bottom and just using that to just get rid of all your problems in one go. It's just like, all right,
Right.
now that we're here, we're not just going to get back up. We're going to be like, we don't need this. Let's get rid of inflation. Let's add an
Hmm.
investment token thing. Let's just like boom, 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 and then be on the right path.
That's the silver lining, is that we just made numerous changes to THORChain because, okay, so when that button was pushed, and I'll go into more detail why the admin mirror existed to begin with, but when that button pushed, it just triggered the whole, like, finally one aspect of the community was just shown to be right. And then everyone kind of rallied around this ethos. Is like, okay, we're done messing around. We need to remove the admin mirror. We need to address block rewards. We need to go back to our original ethos. Now, when it comes to the admin mirror, I will defend its existence. It was actually very important because in the early days of ChaosNet, we were still adding, like, ChaosNet was crazy. I mean, it literally earned its name Chaos because we had consensus failures all the time. We had, we had the exploits,
I was
which were
there,
really,
believe me.
yeah.
Like
I mean, which,
what's funny is I published some random articles on Publish 0x, which is some ETH site. I got a bunch of like random ETH tokens which I consolidated to ETH, and then I thought, you know what, the fees are so high, I can't really do much with them. I'm going to provide liquidity in this ETH pool, and then ETH was down for like 3 months while the price mooned, and so I just like lost out hard on like that stuff for being in ChaosNet. But it was like a few $100. Like I didn't,
yeah.
and like I did not expect to be treated fairly in ChaosNet. I knew what I was just there to have a good time. That's we're all
Yes.
do. We're trying to build this cool thing. So I didn't any money I've lost in all of crypto. I don't care. I have not and never held bad
Yeah.
feelings. But I understand how people do because they have regular day jobs, work hard.
Yeah.
And they put that money, and then all of a sudden they're sweating because they're like, "Oh, my kid's going to be able to go forward to go to college or whatever."
Yeah, I think there's something deep there. And if someone is like really angry and stressed out, they lost money, like, okay, you should not have this crazy attachment to materialism. And this is going to sound shallow of me to say because people have families
Mhm.
and lives. But the point that I would say is if you are committing capital to crypto, first off, that's a risky endeavor no matter what you decide. Because as you said earlier, which is good, there is this delusion of risk-free money generating. Like every investment has, I own real estate. My house could burn down, right? Or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
What was the name of that guy who was it? I forget his name. One of them influencers who's talking about Luna. He's like had that clip of him saying basically risk free. Overlay repeated that.
The
Good
final
times.
last words right there. Yeah, if you're in a position where if you lose your money in crypto, this is gonna like make you just become an angry and bitter person. Just don't commit this cap. You have to fix your own life first off, because when like you in ChaosNet, I committed a decent amount of capital, but when I did, I said goodbye to it. I really did, because for me, like you, I was really interesting. I mean, this whole experiment, this cross-chain liquidity thing was so exciting at the time. But I spiritually just said, if I lose it, I lose it. You know what I mean? I have a whole life to earn more purchasing power. Because Chad said in the very beginning, Chad Barraford, for those who don't know, that we're likely going to get exploited. We're likely going to get hacked. I mean, he said that multiple times in different things. And that was actually the purpose, because ChaosNet was a security audit. It was like, if you have a bank vault and you want to make sure it's secure, you can hire third-party contractors to try to break into it. But sometimes just getting criminals to say, hey, knock yourself out. There's money in there. If you get it, it's yours. And then you learn from what they did. And everything revolved around the ETH router. Everything else was great, you know?
And I have to say, there is the security in trying to break it thing does kind of remind me a lot of things, because of two things in particular. One is, I think the Dash wallet, which is now called Dash Pay, at least on Android, is one of the best in crypto. And one of those reasons is for the last, I'm trying to count the years, 7 years, I've been using that wallet very regularly and talking to the developer about everything that sucks about it. And so there's been this constant feedback. There was this one bug I call the Fezziwig problem, because there was a business called Fezziwig's Food and Fountain close to me that took crypto, including Dash, for a while. And I'd always have transaction failures there, because something about it, the place had a lot of glass inside. It was like a Faraday cage. And so it switched like data to Wi-Fi. And the timing of that plus making a transaction had this weird edge case where the transaction would just hang up. And they were just like, there isn't a problem. We tested this app. It works. I'm like, no, it doesn't. So just feeding them the logs, they fixed that problem.
Right.
All these other bugs, there's these problems. On the other side of things, and I have to say, I've been doing a lot of good work with the Odysee team. Their BD team is really great. I can't use Odysee because they got rid of whatever single vault stuff. So now I need at least 3 devices. I have 2 computers and a phone, but the computers are Linux, and I can't get them to work on Linux. And the extension, the VoltiConnect extension, isn't an actual Voltisig thing, so I can't get that to work there. So I'm just shut out of trying this thing out. And I'm just like, it sounds so easy to set this thing up, but somewhere you didn't throw it at real users who are just like, let me onboard my, non-technical mother to it, for example. And then, which, by the way, random shout out to Tangem, one of those NFC card only wallets. It's the most boomer-proof crypto wallet I've run into, as far as like, it's so hard. It's not perfect, but it's pretty boomer-proof with that stuff. I think they did a good job of making sure it's hard for people to like screw it up, or like, well, I don't have this, and like, no, it's just 3 pieces of plastic. You go beep, 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 and then you put one in your sock drawer, and then give one to the in-laws, and you keep one in your wallet, and you're good. Like, it just makes sense. So yes, you do need to throw aggressive trying to break it stuff at things all the time, or they will remain broken but undiscovered broken.
That's what when you talked about the edge case and Dash, that's why the admin Mimir existed, because there is so complicated. I mean, THORChain's hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and getting blockchains to be able to exchange assets in a way is incredibly complicated. And it was edge case galore 2022, because I have I can communicate with the devs, just like I have like one little thing I communicate with them just in case. I would get people in Telegram all the time like, hey, this failed, or hey, what happened here? And I'd look at it, I'm like, I don't know what happened here. That's weird. I'd send it to them, and it was edge case. But now it's to the point where I haven't had that happen. I haven't had that happen this year, and maybe it happened once or twice last year. but then you still have this admin Mimir.
Mm-hmm.
And
Just
then
in case.
JP, who's unfortunately going through a hard time in his life, probably made the wrong call and wasn't thinking rationally and did that, which it just
Mm-hmm.
takes 3 nodes to reverse anything the admin, and it can't change everything about the network. It's actually pretty tame, but the
Yeah.
market doesn't know that, and it obviously caused a huge scare. And you know the rest from here.
It's funny because of like the Occam's razor type things. There's a lot of, I tend to be very mistrustful of official narratives and stuff, but at the same time, extremely not a conspiracy theorist because of Occam's razor. Like, you would have, a conspiracy theorist would have thought that like JP is like a man on the inside trying to like cause this run and break this thing down, but it's like no, it's a lot simpler than that. He just like he's a bit of a hothead and he made a wrong choice
Right.
because of stuff going on in his life maybe, and
Yeah.
it is what it is. Also, I have to say, Dash was one of the first networks to have like to invent the master nodes, have a 2-tier network, all this kind of stuff. There was a function called a spork, which is a multi-phased fork, which basically was admin Mimir for certain features. And so basically when you do a hard fork upgrade, of which there are many, of which Bitcoin doesn't do anymore, right? There, in case something got weird, there was an ability to like, you upgrade it and then you turn the feature on when everything looks good. And that just hadn't been used in like 5-6 or so years, really. It was kind of a really early thing. And then it wasn't until like recently that it just got removed from the code. And just now we don't have those anymore because we don't need them. And there's a little bit of a parallel to the JP thing where it's just like, why do you, if you don't use it, you don't see it, you don't need to get rid of it, you don't think about getting rid of it, rather.
Yeah.
But there was some, I forget who proposed it, but there was some bit of crypto legislation that happened, again, before the election was looking to turn out the way it was, which would establish a good, clear regulatory framework and would basically make decentralized cryptocurrencies regulated by the CFTC and centralized ones by the SEC. And they had a whole list of criteria of what makes that. And there was some language in that bill that was like, could have been like, maybe a spork would make this a security or something. I don't know. And I just messaged devs. I'm like, yo, look at this. And they're like, oh, okay, well, let's get rid of it in the next release. And they did. And the law never, as far as I know, it just didn't go anywhere. And there's other legislation being proposed anyway. But it's just kind of an interesting thing of like, hey, you remember that thing that we don't need anymore? Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that now. Like,
yeah. I mean, when you're building something that's never been built before, having a big emergency red stop button is kind of nice. And we used it many times, and it was actually used very responsibly up until that one time. But that's all it takes, one time. But yeah, but now let's have the code. It's one time, and it's gone. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And now nodes are completely in control of the network. They control the destiny. No block rewards. Nodes are in control. No more savers. No more THORFi. It's a good time, man. It's a good time. It's been a painful journey, but like I said, I think I told you before this started is, THORChain had its Gandalf the White moment. We had the THORFi Balrog or whatever you want to say, and we come back and I've grown a beard. I've grown a beard now. I feel like THORChain has become a man or a woman, whatever gender you want to say. I don't care.
Or a bearded
and
lady.
THORChain, if you're out there, you now have to grow a beard because you have now leveled up. And if you have a beard beforehand, you have to shave it. It doesn't count. It's effeminate. No good.
Yeah.
Grow a new beard. Except Alex. Alex, your Mexican beard is very powerful, and I love it. And you don't have to shave because you are the Mexican Avenger for THORChain, and we love you very much.
It's funny. I almost wish, so like I've, met the whole team. They're great people. Some of them, because, I'm half Mexican. My father, had some troubles growing facial hair and things like that as well. Like I already have very little body hair, but he just had like one curly chest hair and that's it. Like I know I see some of those team and I understand that they're not clean shaven. They just, that's it. It's like, it's, the, it's kind of where it is. It would be funny to see Jima grow a big old bushy beard though. That would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. If you can't grow a beard, you just grow hair anywhere. You don't tell me where it is. I don't care.
Yeah, please don't tell me. I do not want to know. So let me switch to this this Runetard post, which great name, by the way. Don't change.
I love that guy. He's great.
Yeah, update from last summary, blah, blah, blah. It talks about the implementation phase is all voted on, all this kind of details. And I just did this for number 4 in particular, right? SwapKit and THORSwap and Trust Wallet have re-enabled THORChain swapper. Its volume admittedly low, but 75 million a day in swapping volume is still excellent. I want to see it before blah, blah, blah. That I have to say, like, during this whole, like, insolvency, whatever issue, I understood it was a problem, but I didn't have any existential worry for THORChain. When we got a few pauses, and when THORSwap in particular, I think they were the first one to pause some swaps, and it almost seemed like, and it was also interesting, they integrated with another unnamed DEX rail, whatever, around the same time, and there's some sort of like wonder if they were like being opportunistic about like, oh, let's, you know, kind of like, you know, trying to impress the new girlfriend or whatever. But then they messaged me, like, they sent, you know, so I asked via DM, like, what's going, like, why do you need to pause stuff? And then they said, this is why. And they said that guy who, remember the Doge swapper? There's some guy who swapped like so many Bitcoins or whatever for Doge and like lost a lot of it because the instability of like arbitrage going on at the time had some major issues. That was the only, that, and then, you know, Trust Wallet and, you know, all these other things that like turned off trading, which it's a miracle trading has been as high as it has been without those for when they were off.
Well,
but
and
that's what I have to say. That's what got me worried that this could have been the end. Like,
well,
ooh.
Yeah, and I understand that. That's very logical. The thing with Trust Wallet, it was actually the Nine Realms team that reached out to them and told them to pause.
Yes,
and then
that's my understanding as well.
Yeah, and then THORSwap, when they paused, I didn't quite understand it at all, but I reached out to Mogarky and PaperX, and they broke it down, and their reasons were justified. It's fine. I do appreciate those who did not pause swaps though, because I think that could have been more problematic. I mean, you know how fear is; it just takes a little bit, and then it just really revs up. But that was probably the craziest time, is when there was some pausing happening, like ledger pause and stuff, and people were like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And then there was just certain people who were absolutely just trying to maximize the FUD as soon as possible. Like that day was it was a Saturday. On Telegram, I basically committed the whole day. I basically did an Eric Cartman playing WoW moment where I just went all in, and in Telegram we had 2,000 messages with a 5-minute delay. And so it's crazy. And then all the DMs and stuff, because people were freaking out. You know, it reminded me a lot of the exploits of 2021. But it was, in some ways, I think it was a little worse. And then finally,
2021 was expected, though. That's the thing.
Yes, exactly.
This one felt like people started
getting
them Luna vibes.
There was a reason for, like, there was a known fact that we would get exploited, but a lot of people, they just hear exploit and then they run with a rumor. Here, this was a different situation. But the thing that I always think, like, this is so solvable. Like, we have tons of revenue. We have so many abilities to fix it. We just have to agree, because when this is happening, we had like 5 or 6 propositions to fix it, and we couldn't find consensus. And then, me and Kenton got together and like, let's just do a space. I don't know if you heard our space that we did. It went on for like 3 hours. And then, the community just figured it out in real time. This won't work for this reason. This won't work. And then Alex, he goes by both names. Most amazing man. I love him to death. He comes up with his design of TCY, a Maya, basically a fork of the Maya design. And I love that man. And you know what? The community rallied immediately once we broke it down. It took 3 hours or so, but that's the thing, like us talking is a really underrated form of communication. It's very efficient. With people just texting, you can't tell intonations, you can't tell, it's horrible, right?
It's just a funny way of phrasing it. Talking is a really underrated form of communication.
It is, man. Yeah. We're going to this text world, and it's just like, we need to stop. We need to bring the human element out. If we didn't just, like, we had Proof of Steve, we had Fortune, Kenton, Boone, we had Baloney Bones, we had Koitsu, we had all these really good people on stage, and we just talked about it, the history, what's going on, and then you could see the shift in real time. Just people talking. People just wanted to be just here talking about it. They don't know what's going on. Simple things like that, man. And we figured it out, and here we are. Yeah, it's unfortunate about some communities, or not communities, really certain individuals in certain communities who were real, like went for the neck. You know what I mean? Who really sense weakness, and that was very disturbing for me.
It is kind of funny how because I looked through a lot of that stuff, and some stuff was very obvious, but then also I am perfectly fluent in FUD because I've been in this space for a long time. I know what that looks like, and there's a way of just shifting the way you say things, how you say it, and what you say, that it still sounds like you still have such plausible deniability, but you're putting that out there. And it's just like, dude, I see what you're doing. Like, I don't play dumb.
Yeah,
I know what this
an
is.
open-ended question like, oh, could this mean this? Could this mean that? And it's just like, come on. Here's the thing that kills me, man. Well, here's a question I did not know.
Listen, I understand this is upsetting, and especially at the time, very upsetting to you in particular. But it's hilarious, isn't it?
It is.
It's like, could the planet be about to be consumed by an asteroid? Are they like, no, no, I'm not fudding. I'm just asking a question. I guess the answer is no. I guess the answer is no.
I didn't know
you
that.
ask that fucked up question? Like, it's great.
Know. And then, but the thing is, then someone shares it, and then it reshares, and then the number of reshares gives it legitimacy, right? And here, the thing I didn't know, Joel. This is a question I didn't know. Remember what I said earlier about the differences between centralized exchange volume and DEX volume? How we're so tiny. If you've got, let's say you're like a competitor, we are so small that competition doesn't really make sense. It actually makes sense to actually work together to take people from centralized exchange because, again, it's so tiny, and to extract these people and to teach them about self-custody and swapping without using a centralized exchange, because that actually results in both growth. I mean, I've talked, and by the way, I've met a lot of those community members, and I absolutely love them. Again, this was just select individuals, right? The thing that kills me is I talk to some of these individuals on live on spaces, and I could hear say their children in the background talking and, just whatever. And we would talk about hey man, we're working together, we're interested in liberating them and building a world where they don't have to worry about the things that we have to worry about. And then if there's any challenges to come next, that'll be their responsibility. But this is our moment to really assert our agency and make a world a better place so that they may have a better life than we did. And just have these really deep personal, things. You think you're on the real team, and then the moment something happens, they're just with an axe, you know what I mean? Just coming right for you. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. Lesson learned.
That's the funny thing is I have known some people, there are a lot of miserable, ugly, poor people online who are just trolls. There's definitely some of that, but you can't go by that. The number of just weird, toxic, shitty people that I know who have just a great job and a beautiful family is just weird. It is sometimes, and it turns out a little bit of a weird spot, but it's definitely I've embraced the anti-maxi kind of thing. I have to say some of it is, some of it is just organic, but some of it is just seeing Saint Alex the patient do his work, and just the try to make everyone better off and just not be, because I do get, I'm a bit of a hothead like you are. I do get defensive of people and things that I care about sometimes. I do get that a little bit, and I have to calm down and think about the big picture. And a lot of times, the thing is no one is using crypto. Think about just look out into the sea of humanity you see anytime you walk outside. Well, we probably don't, because we don't live in a super populated areas maybe, but the random people, and think of all the things they're doing, whether it's sending money, sending messages, live streaming, communicating with this, doing paperwork. How much of that is on decentralized tech? And it's nothing, statistical zero, 0.2% of everyone's everything. We are so close, but so far. at the same time from all this stuff, and people are fighting over this nonsense. Like, get out of here. Like,
Right. Well, here's a good thing. What you said is that, like I said earlier, can we exist in a world, like, even if you are a competitor, that you have a higher purpose, a higher goal, and you can work collaborative in a collaborative manner? And the answer is some people can and some people can't. Like Maya Protocol, despite being called a friendly fork, you could say that they are a competitor, or they could be, right? But they are the element. They are the people that truly believe and share the ethos. And again, we're a lot of the same community, but it's like, and now what happened, really the silver linings are a mini to count. We now have this wonderful, the relationship we have now is just so powerful and wonderful. And the people who are truly interested in accomplishing this very hard task have come together. And you saw people work really hard. And ultimately, like TCB, their idea wasn't, we didn't go with their idea, but they threw themselves trying to fix this problem. And so many people stepped up. Now we know. It's good to know who's really on your side. And again, if there's any other, like, I've met a lot of the communities of maybe like protocols that may be considered competitors. I still love those people. And, if you don't like THORChain, consider going to Maya, right? I mean,
yeah.
I want you guys. Like I try to be as sincere as I possibly can. I know when you say you live for a higher purpose, it can reek of narcissism or something like that. And that always scares me. But, it's like, I've made a lot of money before. I invested in Tesla, and I did pretty well, right? And making a lot of money, it feels good. It's really fun. But when it comes to the fulfillment, it dawned on me like, yeah, that was great, but I'd rather have something like, let's say if I'm on my deathbed, I can look back and say, you know what, all these kids are now using these decentralized liquidity channels, or whether it's THORChain or maybe it's called something else, I don't care. I helped build that. Like, that's what I chase a good night's sleep. I don't chase a fat bank account at this point in my life. So,
Yeah.
because I'm getting older, man. I'm losing my prime. I can think now pretty okay, but I'm probably not too far away before my mind starts slowing down, and I gotta pass the torch.
You gotta invest in the next like longevity tech or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is kind of the point. Is like, there is a certain, like, the Tesla thing reminded me of the way our Lord and Savior, Lord Musk, or just be funny there, seems to operate, where I don't view that he views, I don't know what's in his head, but I don't think he views money as his goal, but rather as like points of like, how is he winning at the things he's trying to do. But he certainly is not interested in, he's interested in winning, but he's interested in what he wants to do. He's very interested in what he wants to do. Like, I want to go to Mars. I want to do this. I want to do that. And so at the end of the day, that's something that we should all keep in mind. Like, here's my thing. Like, I've been doing a lot of things in my life, but in the last decade or so, it's been like all crypto. And I still get excited every day when I'm just like, the stuff I have to do for money. I'm like, oh, like, and then I just want to like check my phone and like do some other stuff when I'm like, when it's like date night. Sometimes I'm like, there's a moment of like quiet. Oh, she's going to the bathroom. It's like, and I'm just like, can't wait to do the job. It's just weird. But the point is, like, we're working on something like really interesting and really cool, and I don't want to risk anything to that. The cool thing is there are a lot of communities that are very collaborative, obviously by their nature. I would say, the cross-chain ones are pretty collaborative, which it is weird when they're not, because when they're not, it's like, how can you not be collaborative when literally your whole model relies around that? And it is also fun to see, just a random shout out to the Sarai world. Sarai doesn't exist. Like, it's not there. It's not doing anything, but people are really like attached to it despite that. And that's a great place to start a project. And, I don't know. I don't really remember if that much excitement was external around Maya at the start. There was excitement from certain people, but yeah, it's cool to see. And like, I really hope the newfound attention into these principles kind of like It used to be THORChain is like 92% of like the cross chain stuff, and then Maya and the rest were like, down there. Now THORChain's taken a big hit from that. I think it'll democratize a lot more in the short term, so that we don't end up with like a Bitcoin style situation where the emperor gets stronger and stronger but has no close at the same time.
Right. Yeah. That's what I want. I want there to be multiple protocols, because you have to have resiliency and redundancy, right? I'm glad Maya's here. I mean, THORChain could have died, and then Maya would have been right there to pick up the slack, and I would have become, a Maya chat or whatever, right? So yeah, I'm not afraid of competition. I don't care. The goal is far more important. It's like, the French say, what's your raison d'être? What's your reason to be? Okay. You have to have something that you're striving for. I mean, some people they'll just look you in the eye and say, yeah, I don't care. I'm for money. I'm for this. I'm for material gain. And that's okay. And it's kind of disarming, right? When they say that, like, yeah, I want to make a lot of money and I want to have a lot of hookers and blow. And that's what I want. And it's like, if we're open about it, it's like, okay. But then at some point, to me, like even at the highest version of that, when it comes to enjoyment, there's just this empty, hollow, and vacuous aspect to it. You have to have a principle. You have to have something that you're striving for, something greater than yourself. But that's how I think.
Some people just love them hookers, though, and that's that's just what they want to be doing all the time. But they don't have the means to, and so they acquire the means and then they do it. It's kind of like the retirement thing. About like, I get some people have to work a crappy job and then retire, but I'm what I call pre-retired. I'm already there. I'm just like. Yes. All I do if I retired is scale back my hours a little bit, maybe.
I
have less responsibility. Where if shit goes crazy, someone else gets that call, but I'm still helping. I just don't want to be woken up on the weekend. Maybe when I officially retire, but other than that, I still want to be involved. Like
Yeah, I have passive cash flow at this point from my investments, because when in my 20s I didn't take one vacation. I literally 10 years. No vacation, just worked all the time. And, it's great. Work hard early. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me touch on this other story. Now we've gone through this whole THORChain thing. Well, first, is there anything else on that subject that we haven't kind of hit on?
Well, I guess just try and put a cap on it. THORChain is doing very, very well. And if you talk to Kenton, he says institutional players now, like smart money, they're so happy that we just ripped the Band-Aid and got rid of THORFi and Savers. And if you are someone who is affected by that, I am not happy that you went through that at all. I am a dual LP, and I am currently down a lot, so I have suffered as well. I don't like it. So
I think I had a few $100 in Savers.
Yes,
and I might have had an LP. I don't even know if I had any THORChain LPs, but like I think maybe everything I had in THORChain was wrapped up in this drama, but it was just to have fun and experiment. And now that I'm thinking of they're going to give me TCY, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I would have bought that if they had it, but they didn't. And now I'm getting the investment share.
I think the TCY proposal is an incredible. It's incredible, and I think it has the potential not only to make people whole, but actually to be ahead. So, but that's a big statement, and I'm not interested in making false promises. I'm interested in helping push the success of THORChain and cross-chain in general. The more swap lines, the more integrations. That's how we get this going. So that's my entire focus. And I'm not someone who gets paid to do that. I'm just doing this my own fruition. So if someone wants to help, please just do things. Like, you have agency. Like I'm doing this with the Desert Links right now. And he's not paying me to do this. I don't get money to do this. Just let's make this happen.
I do get money to do this, though.
Yes, that's good. I'm the fool. I need to market. I need to figure out a way to monetize this.
Yeah, but also, like, I never asked for the money that I get for this.
Right.
Someone just wanted to give it to me at some point.
Well, that's how things, like, when you work hard, I mean, opportunities show themselves. So, just like when I had to go my first job, my first career, I worked for free for 2 weeks. I'm like, hey, you don't have to pay me. Just show me how it's done. And I just put my hands to work, and then I got a job, right? They weren't paying me. I was just making money for them. That's how it works. You have to sacrifice in the beginning, and it's hard not to be successful. It really is. If you put in the effort, you're probably going to be just fine.
Yeah, for sure. So, THORChain stuff, it's going to be okay. Especially when you take care of all like the pressure, like the downward pressure from the
Yeah.
inflation, the downward pressure from the synths, the savers, the blending, just everything. You get rid of all that and you start to get the FUD gone, so the trading volume goes back up. Then it's like the bottom buyer LPs who start trying to LP right now will probably do okay, and then TCY holders. I don't know what the price of that's going to be, but we kind of talked about that on the
It's
other.
going to start at 10
Yeah.
cents and then goes from there. I mean, Alex said it probably is going to go somewhere between 15 and 30 cents. He says, I'm just guessing. I mean, who knows, right? I'm buying some. I know that for sure. And just a quick little clarification on dual LPs. Part of the new amendment proposal is dual LPs that are currently like way down. They're actually, the additions are currently paused. So those dual LPs who are affected can enjoy, if that's the right word, the way up when it comes to synth leverage, because if people add now, then they're going to dilute the dual LP liquidity, and then they'll get some of that. So we want the dual LPs who have been in there affected to do well, and then we can resume additions at a later date. But the new chains like Base, which has been added, they don't have that as far as I know. And then Sol, which we add that, and other new chains, they will have no pause. There will be no leverage, nothing like that. It'll just be good old vanilla TC dual LP with potential concentrated liquidity model being added later. But I'm not too sure about that, to be honest with you, on the time frame. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely looking up from there. A couple other things to touch on that aren't related to the whole THORChain bias stuff, because we've been cross trading it to shit and back for a while. This thing I mentioned from Two People in Paradise did a post of, it's someone in El Salvador, right? It says how quickly things change. Landlords in El Salvador are not only refusing to accept Bitcoin even when it is auto-converted to USD, they seem also to be rejecting tenants who use Bitcoin at all. When will the Bitcoin community look in the mirror and ask, where did we go wrong? Well, I have so many things I've said and can say about this that I would just let you go first.
Well, the thing that I read that and I was trying to listen to the comments. And I'm like, now why are landlords, maybe they're not comfortable with Bitcoin, that's one thing, but why are they refusing tenants? Like all these people who moved to El Salvador who are Bitcoiners, like, are they just that insufferable? Is there something about them that, with their selfie sticks and maybe they're a little pompous or whatever? Like, I'm trying to figure out where the issue is, because at the end of the day, it's just money, right? If something, if the problem, if you can convert Bitcoin into liquidity easily, then what place would refuse that money, right? So apparently the infrastructure, as far as I can tell, can't be that well established in El Salvador, beside the fact that they have been warm to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's an interesting. This is something that it could be like hours long thing, and I have to say I am not the foremost expert on this, and also I have not been to El Salvador to witness myself. So, with those caveats, right, that I could be wrong about some stuff, it does seem like, first of all, like the simple. Let me hit the simple layer first, which is, you had this thing mandated by law in a not very technologically capable country in general. That basically everyone who has the technological ability to was supposed to accept this as payment. And so they go, I guess, do it. And they're at a government-run wallet system, the Chivo wallet, which a friend of mine is actually one who I either designed or helped run like the support for, etc. But basically custodial Coinbase style, but it just seemed to have tons of technical problems and bugs. And also, I don't know if you've ever used the Lightning Network, but yeah,
I avoided it because of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe because of me, you should try it. I think. I don't know if it's kind of like passe, like it doesn't matter anymore. So I don't think we need to inflict that upon ourselves. But like, I'm glad I ran a Lightning node and figured out how to use it and stuff, because it is the best crypto experience, of which I'm frequently using, by the way. I'm always at the cutting edge of the best user experience. it's still not like, it's still like a bump. It still doesn't happen like, oh yeah, this is super easy, intuitive. Like, no, you still have to explain a seed phrase. You still have to, oh, why didn't it go through? Check on what's a block explorer. Oh, like there's always things. It's the best is still kind of new. But this is the worst. That's the problem. So you have all these businesses who are, it's basically just the tourist spots and the national chains that actually like took it. And then you have a whole bunch of like people that have never used Bitcoin in their life from, the US and other countries like that, coming in and trying to like workshop this stuff. I'm sure there'd be some friction points there. And so it's just like, okay, well, this crazy leader who we like because he got rid of all the gangs and made it peaceful. We like this guy, but he brought all this, like, these annoying gringos doing this stuff that just, just a pain in the ass. Like, we don't want to deal with these tourists kind of thing. So that's the surface level thing. I'll go into the other thing in just a second. But yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. What you said earlier in the conversation about certain things being boomer friendly, that's what we need. And one thing that I really like that's being developed right now is something called Mocha, right? So I think El Salvador,
I think I downloaded Mocha one time. I don't remember if I've used it.
It's still in beta. It's not ready to go yet, or alpha actually. But essentially, okay. So I think El Salvador, despite maybe not having a lot of infrastructure there, mostly everyone has a smartphone of some degree. I think that's pretty ubiquitous around the world. Maybe not. I might be wrong about that. I've never been to El Salvador, but let's just say the smartphone is the point where you can onboard a lot of people because people are becoming more and more familiar with that. Like with Mocha, you're going to have the ability to swap assets in a decentralized that uses the liquidity pools of like Maya and THORChain. So like if you have someone with Bitcoin and you have to like send it to an address and there's a lot more there. But if you have something on your smartphone that people have like a banking app, like a Zelle or whatever, something to send money, a lot of people are becoming familiar with that. So if you can devise something like Mocha where it's a intuitive crossover of something from TradFi, then the rate at which you can teach people this thing is much easier. But like a lightning node and all that stuff, like it's a heavy lift for a lot of people, I think.
Oh yeah,
heavy lift.
And just the payment success rate and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing that gets a little bit more complex is the general Latin American experience with regard to outsiders. And so some of this stuff goes way back, but there's a continual through line from like many hundreds of years ago, like 500 years ago to today, which is there's people living in the Americas, there's people from Europe who moved, and in like the US, for all the sins of the American past, has become much more homogenous and like democratized. With Latin America, a lot of times there is still this like color gradient kind of society where the people at the top do well, the people at the bottom are still kind of in the recently colonized kind of experience in society. And there's like always in the back of people's minds about like, I'm not as good as the more Western looking educated people like that, or also I resent them for very legitimate reasons. And in a much more modern context, there's like Latin America compared to, I think it's doing great and it's on like a boom trajectory for sure. But historically compared to the West, as we call it, like, US, Canada, and Western Europe and Japan and all that stuff, has been poor and not doing well. But it's also a very geographically beautiful place, for example. And so you've had a lot of white tourists coming down, white and other whatever. And you've had a lot of people who, don't like people coming in because it also reminds them of a lot of like generational problems. But then you have to take their money because you're broke and they got money. And then there's a lot of people that go to these like resort destinations, these island paradises, and treat it like their personal amusement park. And it's someone's home. Someone lives there. Someone's lived there for generations. These people just come in and like but you can't say no because they got the money. But then they disrespect a lot of things in ways that, like, there's a lot of American sentiments about some of this stuff as well, even though the U.S. is so much more homogenized. Everywhere has this sort of thing. And so
Right.
there's all that, like, stuff magnified where now you have this dynamic leader who's just like, look, I'm gonna turn this country around. And he comes in and he does a lot of cool things. He also does stuff that brings the money in, which is the whole crypto stuff, which is, I think it's a great thing because it brings money into the country. Unfortunately, it's a lot of the most probably, it's not just a bunch of, like, rich gringos coming into play. It's a bunch of the most weird, spoiled, out of touch, unrealistic, narcissistic, oh, it's the volcano energy, my laser eyes, just with the most annoying technology that they love to death and think everyone should use, but it sucks. And they're trying to put it on this poor little tortilla stand lady, pupusa stand, whatever. And it just, like, literally, imagine the worst people. And that's kind of the perspective. And so I'm sure you would be like, I'm sure a lot, like, I'm making a lot of assumptions based on, when I grew up in the north of Mexico, even though I'm half Mexican, a Mexican citizen as well, things like that. I had a lot of racial slurs yelled at me and stuff. There's some people that just saw someone who looks like me as, like, one of those fucking guys, for real reasons too. And I'm just getting that vibe where there's like, oh, you mean you wouldn't like those people? You'd rather rent to someone else than, like, these annoying, like, and the whole world with the digital nomad thing is going through this right now. I'm sure, the Thais are very sweet people, but, like, also I'm sure a lot of people in Thailand are just like, another one of these people here to chase after our women and do this. And we can't say no because the money's good, but like, the whole world is going, and, like, the digital nomads in Mexico City that are, like, jacking up the prices for everyone, and all the locals just being like, like, more gringos, god damn it. Like, there's a lot of that going on. And so I understand, like, some of this is natural friction that would happen from this thing, but it's compounded with, Bitcoin maximalists are not ground up people. They're not like that. And there are people on the ground. I know some people who are there, not super well, more secondhand, but there are some people there that have been building, like, local circular economies with Bitcoin and other things with local people and, like, doing the actual work. And those people should be celebrated. It's just that if, the annoying, like, oh, those annoying spoiled people ruin it for everyone, that's kind of what I gathered it would be.
No, I think you're right, because there's a lot of, cultural, idiosyncrasies and nuances from each country that's going to do this, that's going to cause problems. And like you said, this is a leader that kind of slapped this on top of a culture. This wasn't like something that came from the ground up. This came from the top down. And so, you're going to have these cultural friction. I mean, a lot of these countries, they're like really homogenous. They don't have a lot of, like, diversity and in, like, say, maybe the United States, or, and I actually don't have a problem with that. I actually think it's okay. People want to have a certain culture and live a certain way for the most part. And, America has specific cultures in different regions, right? You've got Jewish here and Irish, and, you've got in Arizona, like, half my friends growing up were Mexican. Right, or Latino, but they're from Mexico, right? And so
half my friends in Phoenix didn't have papers, so there you go too.
Yeah, a lot of my friends do. Well, they're anchor babies, right? Which, hey, but but I had a great time. I mean, and so for me, it's like not a big deal. That's why I love Mexicans so much, is because that's like, I'm not Mexican at all. I'm I'm Caucasian and Native American, but I grew up on Mexican food, man. Yeah. Mexicans, I think, are the best when it comes to food. It's just what I am.
Yeah, you could be Mexican because you look like Canelo.
Yeah, I could pass maybe a little bit, I could pass, It's a
funny joke because he's the least, his nickname is literally Ginger, and he's the least Mexican looking dude out there.
Okay.
That's a different story. But yeah, it's kind of funny because at the same time, the guy who ran the Chivo wallet, at least did some part of it, a few years prior was part of an initiative that onboarded around 3,000 merchants in the Caracas area to accept Dash's payments back in the day. And, way better user experience, but also still, we have ancient point of sale technology, so the owner has it on his phone and he's not there that day. And
Yeah.
oh well, the owner drove home on his motorcycle and got murdered because it's upheaval times, and it's not like people are eating out of trash cans. It's not good times for like, or
Right.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
the phone broke, or there's all this kind of stuff. And at that point, that was a much better circumstance, but it was also Venezuelan on Venezuelan stuff. It was like Venezuelans using crypto to pay other Venezuelans for things. Even then, it was just like, it's a hard thing to get people on a radically new money. And
Yeah.
in a contrast with El Salvador, from my understanding, and I'm not an expert in the region, Venezuela was a very rich and technologically advanced country that then had some really bad times happen later. But there was very technologically savvy people there, whereas El Salvador kind of seems like the opposite. Like, it was not doing well at all, and then now is doing a lot better, but most of the people are just not that technologically educated to deal with this stuff. So it's just
Yeah.
a lot of extra things that just make this like, yo, legal tender, and then all of a sudden things are different the next day. It was never going to happen, even if they used something that wasn't crap like the Lightning Network,
Yeah. I'm curious to see. I want more data. I want more countries to kind of go with that model and see, because it could just be a culturally specific thing where you're just there too soon. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to advantages, like maybe it's superior in a technological way, but if you don't have the infrastructure, or like you said, the guy's not there with the phone there today, that's really limiting. And the thing with, like, to me, it's like with Mocha, just like if you have, there's an economic benefit to it, right? Like when you have a credit card, I don't know what they charge in other countries, but like in the United States, it's like 150, 300 basis points, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you can make an economic model where they don't have that fee, or it's like way less, like less than 1% of that fee, then you have a direct economic incentive to want to pursue this technology because you're making more money. And so, yeah, I think it's a combination of just like cultural problems, infrastructure problems, and then incentive. You need incentive. If you can get that situated. But again, the culture aspect, I really don't know how you get around that one. That just takes time, I think.
Yeah,
people.
I have to say though, as far as culture, the worst part of the world for crypto adoption, culturally speaking, as money, is probably Central Europe, because first of all, like the U.S., I haven't been in fiat in a long time, right? But from my understanding, the U.S. fiat systems just suck compared to the European ones. Like in terms of like how simple everything is. Like right now, there's still a lot of people I see in the U.S. who swipe cards or put the chip in or whatever. That hasn't been a thing in Europe in so many years. Everyone taps, and just like the tap and pay terminal, it just works. There was a local restaurant that in the last year got on board with that. It's just so embarrassing. And like the number of times, because so I have a little NFC, it's not on me right now, but a watch that I use because I top off some crypto card and then I go tap and pay that way. So for places that don't take crypto directly, and it's so much easier for me to do that in Europe rather than literally my own home, because
Right.
everyone in the U.S. does the little, like, get the little book out and want the plastic card. You put in the book and they take it away. Like Europe, they come to you. Anyway, that's a little bit of rambling on the payment stuff, but just like the attitudes of like, well, everything should be legal, and the government has our best interests, and we just everything's by the book, and there's just no like incentive to fight against that stuff. So it's like, well, why? Well, the euro works well. I get because of for the free banking laws, I can transfer any money instantly to my other friend with a bank account for no charge. So why would I use crypto? And they just like don't get it. They don't care. A lot of people, I should say, not everyone. Bitrefill is headquartered in Sweden, which is it's the most probably the most important company for crypto adoption in the world, and they're headquartered in the worst place in the world for this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like that. The U.S. is, I hate to say it like this, because in all our fantasies, we're all like, oh man, the third world, the developing world is going to get on the crypto and the hyperinflating. They're going to probably crypto mass adoption as currency is going to happen in the U.S. first, because you have that rebellious streak or whatever at the same time as you have a lot of capital and you have a lot of technology. And you have those two things in Europe, but not the rebellious streak. And then you have the need for better technology, but people have bigger problems than to figure out like a crypto payment app in like Ghana, for example, where I have
Right.
dealt with some people who do use crypto there, but it's like the average person is just, using coins and paper, barter, or like whatever it is. They're not on that level. They're not going to be experimenting with weird crap like we are,
Yeah, because they still have the ability. Like you would think, crypto would thrive in places with currency that's maybe not so stable or has high inflation, is very unstable. But then there's other ways you can preserve your purchasing power. Like I got American Silver Eagle here, like precious metal, or there's things that they know what to do, or you go buy a vehicle or just something to retain your purchasing power. Crypto is not necessarily the one. Is not the first thing that comes to mind for these developing countries. So yeah, I think you're right. I think America is gonna, we're going to be some of the first. I'm not that familiar with the crypto scene in Europe of how advanced it is, because it's hard because I talk to a lot of people in Europe, but they're like top of the food chain when it comes to the knowledge on this stuff. And
Yeah.
what does the average person think in Europe, and in like Germany, France, whatever, UK, all the different countries? That I just don't know.
Yeah, I think the average American is positive on crypto, or
Yeah.
or at least accepting that it's the future. I think probably in Europe it's a lot more of a mixed bag, right? Because all my best, well, not all, but most of my best crypto friends are like European and other places like that. They're great, and they always tell me their normie friends don't get it.
Yes.
And here, especially in the free state of New Hampshire, it's not that hard to talk to a random person. Even if they're not interested, they get it right off the bat. They're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Okay. I get it. They're not like, why would I use this? This is a sketchy scam. It's like the government mandated or nothing. Or like, they don't have that thinking at all. Not in the live free or die state, at least, Let me touch on this Ethereum, the Etherscan thing before we wrap up.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Ethereum cards feature is pretty cool. Yeah, this fellow posted. And basically a card is a thing that shows, I'm going to zoom in on this thing here. Risk scoring on Ethereum transactions. It's called a credit score, which is kind of funny. And as the credit score of low risk, high risk, whatever. And then EAS attestations, builder score, safety score, yield opportunity, DAO activity, all this other stuff. Just doing complex scoring on this stuff. And he's like, oh, this is a cool thing. And in the comments, I have Tuxedo, who I haven't met in person, but he works for K because I'm an Arrow dude. He seems pretty cool. He says, pretty cool? You think social credit score for your fucking Ethereum dress is cool? And so you have a interesting mix of people being like, oh, this is cool. And someone even calls it CCP scan over here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. So what's your kind of take on this stuff?
Well, I was trying, like, when I first, because I just read it today, and I was trying to model in my brain, like, what is the most positive aspect of it, and then the negative, and then, yeah, the social credit thing is an absolute dystopian nightmare. But I was thinking, okay, if you have this that was segmented to institutional players, maybe if it's just institutional addresses, it sort of makes sense from, like, an investor perspective, but at the same time, from a first principle perspective, I don't want to do anything. I don't want an arbitrary system that measures the viability of something. That just seems like it's rife for abuse. So I think first principles, this idea is just bad. And I think we just need to push the privacy thing again. I think we need anonymous, because I don't really understand the benefit. Like, I guess for a contract address, but I don't know. I think I'm kind of with the guys in the comments that are just kind of excoriating this guy. And it doesn't help that Vitalik Buterin said, make communism great again yesterday. I don't know what the hell
it was. Listen, he was, I guess in his defense, he was being funny and making like a joke out of a thing. At the same time, if you say, yeah, make the Third Reich great again, even if it's a joke, you got to be careful. That's for the private chat rooms to make that joke. It's not. Don't say it publicly. Communism's not cool.
It's like, okay, first off, I don't even know why I would ever make that statement. It would have to be the most obvious satirical manner. For there, it
Yes.
wasn't very obvious, but then people make the argument like, well, he's so high IQ that you just don't simply understand his joke. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess there just comes a point where the IQ is so high that it's indistinguishable from a low IQ joke. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, remember in that Pirates of the Caribbean movie when they flipped the ship over and it just ended up on the other side of the world, right
Yeah,
side up. It's like at some point things get a little weird. Yeah,
yeah,
the address scoring thing, and this is kind of funny to me because this is such like a learning thing, and like I'm not that old, but I do feel old in the crypto world, and before you know it, I'm gonna be some grandpa with some kids that just wants to ramble about, oh, did you know about, just be a fountain of lore and nothing else, like literally a lore puppet on the shelf there or whatever. But I remember in the early days, my first Bitcoin wallet did not have a seed phrase because they hadn't invented those yet, and it also had one address. And I remember when they came out with HD wallets, and now I had like a recovery phrase to write down, and then they kept getting me a new address every time, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I want to use the other one. Like, I didn't get the privacy implications of that stuff. And then of course you learn about privacy. You start using CoinJoin, stuff like that. You start using stuff like Monero, and you start getting into stealth addresses and ring signatures, and there's a zero knowledge encryption coming up, and okay, there's all this stuff. But then, like Ethereum with the account-based model, where you just have one address, you don't do a new thing every time, has sort of normalized that address, the account. It's like, oh, it's like my bank account, but has sort of normalized this no privacy, zero privacy thinking, where now this is like, now it's not just, oh, this is an address and you can see money coming in and out. And now you have like tokens, like, oh, this guy's got Tether and other stable coins. Okay. But now this guy's got other tokens that are shares in this. Now you got NFTs. Now you got NFTs that are associated with your website domains and stuff. Now it's like, this is literally your entire profile here. Is this tied to this address, this single public key? And that's where it's not a good direction to be going in. It should be built, in my opinion, from like privacy first, and then find a way of doing that whole thing, which admittedly technologically is so much harder. But at the same time, like where we are, if I do appreciate when you do have like exchanges like Kraken or Binance or whatever that have like a doxed address. And so if you're like, hey, here's my Binance way, so you get to see if you're being scammed. I understand that. That part makes sense.
yes,
I think it should be an institutional tool, though. It should not be like, I don't think there's anything wrong with this tool. I just think the implications of how people will get too comfortable using it
right.
is going to be like
Yeah, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, man, for sure. That's my initial thought as well. I think, when it comes to privacy, we should be maximize privacy, but then, like as Elon said, making everything on government go on chain, because obviously it's too easy to obfuscate funds in our own government. I mean, I don't know if you saw the thing. It was the $8 million to study what flavored cigarettes lesbians like. And before people freak out, like, it's nothing to do with lesbians. It could have been gay guys or heterosexuals. Like, I would have been equally baffled. But it's like, what? Like, that's clearly spending money.
Let's take this full circle back to THORChain, right? If someone wants to blow money like this, that's fine if it's their money. The problem is when the losses are socialized. If the LPers are paying, the THORChain LPers are paying to study the lesbian cigarettes. Yeah, ooh, that's where it starts to become weird. That's the taxpayer situation right now.
Right. So what people will say, a TCB would say, and I understand where he's coming from. He'd say, do LPs knew about the leverage and they accepted the risk, and so they, on the downside, like that, they own that, which he's not necessarily wrong, but the problem is the history of it. There's more context there, because a lot of the deepest, the biggest LPs are from ChaosNet days, which was vanilla TC, right? There was no chat about necessarily savers or any of these different design primitives. And so they just wanted the deal of impermanent loss. And if you stay long enough, you're whole and then you're in the green, right? So they've been trapped ever since because they've been in permanent loss for like 4 or 5 years, right? So the new entrants to dual LP, if they understand savers, yes, that's true. But the like OG dual LPs, like they didn't like the saver stuff at all. And I was just, even when go back in Discord, I've just been hounding like savers is a bad idea. We need to pause it. We need to get rid of it. Been advocating them for years. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's
the experience of savers was a fantastic idea and continues to be. The problem is just like how you get it done, or just the fact you can't afford to get it done is the problem.
No risk is wrong. It's risk. There's risk somewhere. If it's not for the savers, it's on the dual LPs. But then if you over leverage the dual LPs, then it's the whole protocol's at risk, right? Like the risk then is just magnified. So the idea, like if you're going to commit capital, there's always going to be risk in some way. Like that doesn't exist. It breaks the laws of the universe to make money with no risk. There's always risk at some point, some level.
So the thing about that's interesting. So ILP, impermanent loss protection, I never liked that at all because I felt like it was like a subsidy for something that shouldn't, like if you need to subsidize it, it doesn't need to work. Like you should not do it. And a lot of this stuff, because it's so complex, and I wasn't here at the founding of things. I was there at the Maya founding maybe, but I was not there, I was there in the early THORChain ChaosNet days, but not before ChaosNet, right? It never sat well with me that like you're losing money, but then someone's paying you back, and it just the calculation, like how do you trigger, like how long do you have to hold before you get it? And like, just to my mind, it's better to just let the system work as it does. And if you need deeper pools, just subsidize the pools more directly with pay them more. Right, so you still have the risk, but you just get paid enough to where the risk is great, and that's kind of what I guess the block rewards did, and some other stuff like that. Not with Maya, Maya's just raw dogging it out there, But the funny thing about Maya is, I guess I'll sort of like wrap up with just like my talk about the things that Maya got right. Risk. I mean, there is impermanent loss protection, or there was at Maya. Again, I don't keep up with these changes. Everything moves so fast in crypto anyway. But what I like about the liquidity auction, where people just deposited money, and then based on however much they had during this time, they just got all the cacao. And they just, there you go, you got it now. And of course, the things, once you airdrop, people dump their airdrops right away, and so this is sort of an airdrop. You get all this money, and then they had like the lockup tiers about like the longer you lock it up, the more things you get from it. And I do remember watching about, first of all, what they get out of it would be like Maya tokens, like equity. You'd get more equity in this thing, which is super valuable, but it's long-term thinking valuable. You're not just paying you more coins you can dump. You're just like, no, you're getting long-term equity in this project. And it's surprising how few people dumped their free money. A lot of people just sat on it, and probably, I don't know if they lost money in the hole by now, but they didn't just get their free money and just run away with it like that. They stuck around when there was like $4 in network fees, or whatever, and just waiting for that to come in, and just like, we're here to participate in something cool. And I feel like the thing is, when there's all these shenanigans, like, the whole THORChain system happened, just random things, leverage here, whatever, all this stuff going on. It's easy to get freaked out about loss of money. But when the system is sound and you believe in it, it's easy to be patient. And I think the Mayans are patient, and I think because Alux is patient, people kind of mimic that, the leadership, it goes down.
Yes.
And, hopefully the THORChain leaders now can be much more patient and less hot-headed, although you do need a little bit of hot-headed stuff for the innovation that needed to take place. But then, now that we have a sound system in place, a Patriotsounds system, sorry, I had to get a little pun in there. It should be hopefully you get less whining about, I don't know, the LPs are up or down, or hopefully you have more people that are just like, I'm here for the long haul. I'm waiting for this thing to turn into what it always should have been.
Yeah, I think you touched it right. The thing with what Alex has said in the past, THORChain was the first, and so they had to trip and scrape their knees and fall down and take the wrong path here and run into the rock wall and backpedal and all that stuff. He says that's what THORChain had to do, and he says
Mm-hmm.
one thing he said he complimented THORChain that's more like a little superior than Maya is that because THORChain had the gauntlet and had to solve these problems, the devs are really proven in their ability to address like issues like consensus failures and all these weird edge case bugs. Like they're super good at it because they've had to do it so many times. And Alex would say, I don't think we've been tested that much, but honestly, I've full confidence in the team. And the great thing with Maya and THORChain is that they share information. Like they've found nuance bugs in the code because they're a fork, and they inform Nine Realms, and then Nine Realms obviously reciprocates. So there's a lot of things happening in the background too that just make the relationship so great, So I like what you said. It's THORChain is back to being its boring old design, and bless the Maya community, which is also my community as well. I'm feeling really good. It's going to be it's there's a painful period, but I think where the worst is way behind us now, and I've been seeing the chatter and Telegram, and people are getting excited and happy. Even people who have been savers, like they're like, okay, I think this proposal is good. It's going to work out, and we know what we have to do now. Like there's no ambiguity, right? Because before, how long we're going to have the THORFi stuff? How long, the block rewards? At what period are we going to like get down to 0%? We went no block rewards. THORFi's gone. Savers is done. Proposal 6, and now we just move on and execute. So. And then
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap my part up with a self shell just because it's appropriate to this article I wrote called Stop Hoarding Gas Tokens. That goes into all these kinds of things. And if you scroll down enough on this article, which I've been quoting this article many times as I've applied it to different cryptos. I linked to this article from the 14th, literally a month ago today, interesting enough, about how can we survive the THORChain/Maya bear, which talks about kind of the same principles but applied specifically to those networks. Kind of the overarching thing is also like, why are you in for example, the Bitcoin liquidity pool earning like 8% APY plus all this crazy volatility and risk if you could just swap it over to USDT of Tether on Binance Smart Chain and make 288% or something? Like, why are you allocating money poorly here? Like, you're bitching about being poor. Here's how to not be poor, right over there. Like, go right there. And people have this weird idea where they're like, well, I like Bitcoin. I'm invested in its long-term success. And I like Rune, and I'm invested in its long-term success. So I want both, and I will be rewarded for my righteousness with money. And then they're just like, dude, like, what if I'm like, I'm a ribeye maximalist. I just want to like, okay, but there's a lot of people ordering the burger. Why don't you invest in the fucking burger and you're going to make money, or shut up about not making money? Like one or the other. People seem to have this weird thinking where they're like, I understand there's more risk. I don't want to hold Tether on Binance Smart Chain either. But if they're paying me and I can rotate that back into the assets I like later, get at the money and balance those pools out. I do feel like the liquidity pools on a lot of these networks, there's some difference because of risk factors of like the riskier chains or whatever that have less volume, that people just don't want to like, okay, well, maybe I'm making good money, but this could change tomorrow. Or maybe the asset. I understand that, but it's still very lopsided. Like, it's not well distributed. I think that if you even it out, first of all, more people will make money, rather than like 2-3 degens just gobbling it all up, and then all the foot soldiers just losing their money. But then also, like, if there's less liquidity in the Bitcoin pool, for example, or the Ethereum pool, the APYs go up, and then it's better for people in those pools. If you just like I have a feeling some of these like 580 whatever percent APY pool holders, those LPers are just not saying anything because they've been doing great, and they just don't want to say anything, or people are going to be get in on their action and ruin it for them. But like, I have a feeling that when they say the liquidity providers are not doing well or they're underwater, I have a feeling a lot are, but there's a lot who aren't, who are very much the opposite, or just aren't saying anything. And maybe if people can be smart, we can even that out a bit so everyone is making money, or some people are losing just a little bit, but not that much. And then, just kind of even the whole thing out, make it less of a thing.
Yeah. Amen. I think that's definitely a strong argument. And I think that's a great way to top it off, man. I
Perfect.
think that's fine. Yes, sir.
All right. So shill o'clock. What do you want to shill for yourself?
Well, I'm Patriotsounds on X. You can follow me. I'm interested in meeting people and collaborating and getting things. We do a cross-chain and chill space. We're going to do one tomorrow. I believe it's 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, but I'm going to make a post on it. Most important thing is just promote. If you're a THORChain, promote THORChain, get active. Come meet me at BTC Las Vegas. I will be there. Show up. It's so much fun to talk to people in real life. Like the Desert Link said, normie talk is really boring. When you get around individuals that truly get it, it's just a different experience, and it changes your life. So, if they're going to shill anything about myself, I want to shill to you. Get active, start doing your own thing, and assert your agency, because you're a very smart person and you can do a lot. So
most people are very smart.
Most.
Careful.
Most.
You're going to have to encourage some of the weirdos here, but yes, I will be in Vegas during that time as well. So
yeah, I'm going to definitely come out and see you, man. Absolutely.
If anyone wants to meet up and stuff, just come. I mean, wherever I'm going to be. I'm not a huge fan of Vegas, because of the strip. I'm not a really big fan of that stuff. But if you're into craft cocktails or something, I'll surely find a place to sneak out and get something good and that actually works. So
heck yeah, man. Love it.
All that stuff. All right, everyone, don't forget, taxation is theft. Your phone is spying on you. Fiat is a scam. Start living on crypto before it's too late. And have a good Valentine's Day and whole weekend. And I'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.